Trusted American Mortgage. Ever heard of it, guys? Hey, I'm Nate Jackson. I'm here with Brandon Krisztal off field. We're going to get into that in a minute. But Trusted American Mortgage wants to help you get into a better home and save money on your mortgage. How does that sound? Go to trustedamericanmortgage.com. Hello and following the script. But hey. Okay, we're back. And we're back. That was fast. Hello, folks. Are we live? Yeah, we are.
We're live.
All right, hey, there. Boo-ba. What's up, guys? I'm Nate Jackson here with Brandon Krisztal, fresh off of a week at the Super Bowl, Brandon. And today we're going to get into the Broncos. We were going to do kind of a season review of the Broncos. But before we get into that, Brandon, how was your time in New Orleans?
It was enjoyable. It's a great city, great Super Bowl city. 11 times they've now hosted the game. It's without question one of my favorite cities in America just to visit and to eat. You could spend all week, eating the great seafood and experiencing New Orleans culture. It was interesting because I had this conversation with Mark Kisler last night at the Nuggets game, that he got the sense that New Orleans didn't really want the Super Bowl.
What's up?
Because of all the extra stuff that comes with it and all the corporate folks and all the, just that New Orleans they love Mardi Gras. And they love everybody coming in town for Mardi Gras and spending money and this and that. But when corporate folks are there, apparently some of them aren't the best tippers, or they're expected to be wined and dined. And they do have all these events, so that handles those venues, but people aren't necessarily then venturing out on the town the way they might. Not that Bourbon Street wasn't crowded and it was extremely safe. I talked to somebody from the Louisiana Bureau of Investigation. I happened to be standing by him at halftime when I went down to try to get a better view of Kendrick Lamar's performance, which actually turned out to be a worse view from where I chose. Versus where I was sitting, I was just closer, but not a better vantage point. He said,
"How was that in person? Because it was so intricate, involved.
They're always never as good. The LA one was close, and I happened to be on the right side of where I was standing for that.
Yeah.
But because of the way that set was, and there weren't as many dancers, and it was about Snoop, and it was about Eminem, and it was about Dr. Dre. That one, and you were in LA, and they're all playing these hits. Like Kendrick Lamar has a way different audience than those guys do.
Yeah, a little younger,
just younger, and that's okay too, because I don't think the halftime show is for people like me and you. Not that you and I are both music fans. Why is it not? Because we're already watching the game. We're watching the game no matter what. So,
but shouldn't the halftime show be about the people watching the game?
No, the halftime show is about the people that are there just to watch the spectacle and the commercials and Super Bowl parties.
Really?
Because we're gonna watch a championship game. We're gonna watch every playoff game. We're in. The NFL has us. Yeah, they could play the Puppy Bowl at halftime, and it wouldn't change whether or not we're coming back in the third quarter.
No. I guess that's a good point. I mean, the viewership for the game was like 120 something million, and then for the halftime show was 131 million. So like another 6 million.
But that number's a little skewed. Tell me what the number was at the high, and we can look this up, but I don't know at the highest point.
Yeah.
Like, call it middle of the first quarter, probably, or second quarter when the game's still close. That number's probably over 132 million. But that's not the whole game.
What I'm saying is, you take the difference between how many were watching it for the halftime show, and then how many were watching it, I guess at its peak, or the average.
That's the average,
and that's how many people joined for the halftime show only. So if roughly,
So
let's say 5 million people. Don't you want to appeal to the other 125 million people who are watching the game for this halftime show? I mean, for Kendrick, he didn't play like many of his hits. It was a very niche kind of performance.
Well, I don't know. That song just won a bunch of Grammys. A song where he's calling Drake a pedophile.
Right, and so was that a little petty on that stage to take a shot at
his ex-girlfriend? No, it was definitely and you see all these different breakdowns of the symbolism.
Yeah,
at the very beginning, is that a PlayStation controller? And Sony owns PlayStation. Those XO triangle, everyone was talking about Squid Game. Well, the idea that it's a Sony PlayStation controller when Sony is the record label that Drake is on takes it to another level of.
That's too much.
Well, that makes more sense to me than Squid Game. Because what's the Squid Game tie-in?
Why do we have to why is it
Why are you using the biggest stage on the planet?
Why do I have to do homework in advance of the halftime show to appreciate it? Why is it the Legend of Zelda? Why is it a whodunit? I mean,
like Usher last year. So I was in the stadium last year, and again high up, but was looking right at the stage. And like I was next to this girl that was from Central California, like Sacramento or Fresno or something, and she was rocking with and I like Usher too.
Yeah.
But this is what you realize when you're there. it's 13 minutes, give or take. It's fun to watch the stage get assembled and then disassembled.
Right.
It's still a TV show.
Yeah.
Because then I went back and watched it, and and you see Kendrick walking and play into the camera. It is a TV show, and the people in the stands are ancillary. Which you can make that case even when you're watching a football game. It's better on TV than for the 65, 70,000 fans in the stands. But just back to what I was talking to the guy from the Louisiana Bureau of Investigation. And we were talking about security and everything. And I was like, yeah, Bourbon Street feels like the safest place in America. I said, was that already the plan? Because I'd heard that they were going to amp it up after the, getting ready for the Super Bowl anyway. And he goes, no, it would have been about a third of that. I mean, they had metal barricades at every street entry point from Canal Street to basically the end of where all the bars are on Bourbon Street, and every street in between, and then every street a block either way. So you could get, if you had a vehicle and you had to make a delivery during the day, or you lived in that area and you could prove that you needed to be there, they would drop the barricade. And they had this huge military presence. But as he pointed out, every one of their guns isn't loaded because the military cannot be armed on U.S. soil.
What?
They can't.
What if they need to be?
If the National Guard is called in, that's different, I suppose. But in general, in a non-military situation, which is they're just there for crowd control essentially and for the optics, but they are not allowed. They can be on army bases or military bases, but they can't be armed just in the streets.
Why not?
But the Louisiana State Police can, and the Louisiana and the New Orleans police officers can.
Yeah,
and those people,
and they were,
they were. But no, I did see like military personnel like dealing with drunk people, and I don't mean like drunk people fighting like John Rocker and Pat Mahomes Senior, just like drunk girl crying and fighting with her friend, and this dude military is like, hey, it's okay, like they're having to just kind of do that, which is still felt safe. But it's a great city because you can walk everywhere, great food, great culture, and then they do a good job putting on. The Superdome kind of sucks. It's gotten better. They've renovated it, but it'll be back there again sooner than later. Last time I was there was Super Bowl 40,
12 years ago.
Yeah, 47.
Yeah.
So 47.
Niners and the Ravens.
Speaking of Niners, is it interesting that next year it's at Levi's Stadium, which is obviously the site of Super Bowl 50. So 10 years returning.
Nice.
Whereas Jerry World, which was the 2010 Super Bowl, has not gotten a second Super Bowl. Because I understand why they're going back to LA. Stan Kroenke did the league a favor by putting a stadium in LA, paying for it himself, putting NFL Network's headquarters there, paying for that, and giving it to the NFL for free, playing all those games overseas while they were playing at the Coliseum and all that. And so Stan Kroenke's been as good a loyal owner, loyal soldier for the league as anybody. So I get going back, and it's LA. And I'm not picking on the Bay Area at all. I just think it's interesting that it's going back there before it goes back to Jerry World.
California's a lot cooler than Texas. I know you're from Texas.
Yeah, look, we're all from somewhere.
But the weather's going to be better. Maybe there's more to do there.
It's all spread out, though, because the stadium's not in San Francisco.
No.
Downtown San Francisco certainly has had some challenges, like in the city. And we'll see this weekend. The NBA All-Star Game is there. It's at it's at the Chase Center where the Warriors play. So there'll be a good kind of test run for the Super Bowl. But the most disappointing thing about the whole week was the game was kind of a dud.
And we're going to get into the game in our halftime of this show.
Okay.
But let's get this show started with the first quarter, and we're going to talk Broncos because you were out there at the Super Bowl. You talked to people about the Broncos. The Broncos finished 10-7, Brandon, and Vegas and everyone else thought they were going to suck. 5.5 games was the over-under that Vegas gave them to start this season. PFF had them as the worst roster in the year. In the league. Talk a little bit about the Broncos season and what the takeaways are after all is said and done.
In general, you look at it and to think about where they were a year ago and the Russ-Sean marriage just not working.
Yeah.
And then the idea that the Russ trade didn't work and what was that going to mean for their salary cap. And there's 6 quarterbacks in the draft, but you're not getting Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels. So then does Sean Payton like J.J. McCarthy? Well, that's what we're hearing. Maybe not as early as the Super Bowl. Does Michael Penix make sense? Drake May, you never really heard any buzz about Drake May. And then you had people like Chris Sims and a couple others that were like, no, Bo Nix is the perfect quarterback for Sean Payton. He'll run exactly what he wants. He'll do it. And
you know who else said that? This guy.
There you go. All right. So
this guy, I called it
Chris,
months in advance.
Chris, and somebody else, I can't remember who I was talking to, but a football person of note was like, yeah, I said it a year ago. Go check the tape. And I'm like, all right.
That's the thing about punditry. We all say a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But
Like,
there are people that
no
will.
one's going to go check the tape.
No, but there are people that will stake a flag, and then you'll find people that'll have tweets. This is
retweet their own
small
tweet.
sidebar. Daniel Jeremiah, who's as good a guy with the draft as anybody, NFL Network, and does Chargers radio as well. He had a tweet from 2014 that said Kellen Moore will be a college coach within the next decade, a head college coach. He now fast forwarded and yesterday tweeted, well, I guess I was wrong on both accounts because it was 11 years and he's an NFL coach. But I'm like,
why are you going back?
Why do you remember your own tweet about Kellen Moore from a decade? Good for him, unless he's
the
gotten
egos
him down.
involved with media folks, is pretty large.
Yeah.
And it's like, people will stake their claim on an idea and dig their heels in on it. And their analysis will be based on the things they said prior, trying to make that come true. I mean, there's a lot of what I mean by that is there's a lot of criticism on Bo Nix's arm strength going into the season. That was the big knock on it. The experts were saying Bo's arm strength isn't good enough to be an NFL quarterback, so you can't draft him in the first round. This guy's not an NFL talent. His arm strength isn't good enough. I saw him next to J.J. McCarthy. I saw him next to these others, and he pales in comparison. Well, that's wrong.
Yeah.
We saw it. He threw a freaking 68-yard bomb.
Second longest air yards
since it's been charted, right? And so those folks were wrong, but even in the face of evidence when Bo started to uncork the cannon, they still were skeptical, and finally they're coming around. So I think that, people dig their heels in on their takes. But a lot of that, so a lot of takes had the Broncos being bad.
And now you fast forward a year. And the one thing, though, even as bad as they were record-wise a year ago, I guess they weren't terrible when you think about finishing 8-9 and in the playoff mix later than they had been in a while. It was like, okay, Sean is going to get this figured out. And, I brought that up here before, and we're going to see it at the Combine again. But the people you talked to at the Combine were like, Sean's too good of a coach. They have so much respect for people like Sean Payton, Mike Tomlin, Howie Roseman, Kevin Corbett, who was the GM in Pittsburgh forever. Guys that can keep their job a long time. It's because you're figuring out ways to win. And they know how hard it is to keep a job for a long time. I mean, John Elway was a GM for 11 years. It's a little different, but his first 5 years were so good, and he's John Elway. Had his first 5 years look like his last 6, he wouldn't have been there 11. He would have been there 6. But so the appreciation they have for guys that can sustain success and keep their jobs for, like Mickey Loomis has been in New Orleans, and I know Sean was a big part of that, and Drew Brees. But Mickey Loomis has been there now 20 years. He's been the GM. You just don't see that in a lot of places. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, and Jed York came out and said, these are the guys that are going to get this right. Cowboys don't really count. But otherwise, there are management shifts and certainly coaching changes. But so that was sort of the thought a year ago. So again, fast forward to now with what Sean and Bo put out there, and then what the defense, a lot of people were giving more credit to the defense than maybe Sean Payton does all the time because they were top 3 defense with the defensive player of the year. So plenty of people are buying Broncos stock. They'll acknowledge Joe Burrow and the Bengals will get it figured out. Chiefs aren't going too far away. They may not have had a great game, and they need to fix some things. And certainly Lamar and Josh Allen. The AFC is not getting easier. By the way, Pete Carroll's coaching the Raiders now, and Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers are going to be in the mix too.
So do you think it was a success?
Yeah,
a successful season.
Absolutely. But don't you think? I think you can't call it anything but a success. If we were going to recap the season as just a general team grade, playoffs. If you make the playoffs, your grade as a team can't be lower than a B+.
Right. Yeah, no, I would give, we're going to do grades in the second quarter, so hang on until the second quarter, which is coming in a couple of minutes. But, expectations were low. There was a lot of, I would call it, disrespect of the roster and the I know that when you make lists, someone's got to be last on the list. But the Broncos being 32nd on the list after going 9-8 the previous year or whatever they went, or 8-9. Yeah, but that's not the worst team in the league.
No.
And so I thought it was a little bit disrespectful of the team, but also they had a lot to prove. They clearly internalized that and played some good football. They lost their first 2 games. Bo Nix started from the get-go, and I know there was a conversation being had about whether or not Bo should start week 1 because Jarrett Stidham was the incumbent. Zach Wilson has 34 starts.
34 starts, yeah.
And so Bo Nix was, the neophyte there. But clearly won the job in camp. even though nobody really pulled away in camp, everybody sort of looked the same day to day. But then Bo later on in camp started to kind of, I guess, pull away. It wasn't a runaway.
No, it wasn't a runaway.
Those guys are all capable quarterbacks, articulating the offense in a way that they were asked to do it during training camp. And that's the thing. You go to training camp and you think you're going to see high flying action, balls flying all around. Nope. What you're seeing are quarterbacks doing what they're told, learning these plays right before they go out, and then executing the plays with a defense that the coach draws up. They want to see exactly what they want to see. And then the quarterback has one answer and they all know the answer going in and they all hit that guy. There's not a lot of freestyling out there. Like the stuff we saw Bo Nix do in the regular season, we didn't see that in camp.
No.
We didn't, because there was not that opportunity. But one of the things that people talk about with Bo is that he took him by surprise with his legs and his speed.
Including Sean.
Nick Bonito, who's like, now he's being recognized as a badass, right? And he's doing his rounds. He did like the Ryan Clark podcast, the Pivot, whatever. Nick Bonito, what's up? Come on our show, man. Come on off field. It's a local show, okay? You can come here and we could just talk ball, we can talk shop, we can talk life. We can talk whatever you want. But Nick Bonito was talking to Ryan Clark, and he talked about Bo's speed. And so you got to feel good about the quarterback. You got to feel good about the defense. You got the defensive player of the year. You got a coach who has the pedigree. And you got, a lot of young, promising players that, as a Broncos fan, you feel good about having on your team.
And I think it's going to be interesting to see their strategy, because at the end of the year, we talked to Sean, but not really about free agency. And, we'll get to talk to Sean and George in a couple weeks at the Combine. George said, we're going to wait and see. They obviously had to spend a lot of money 2 years ago to bolster the O-line, and they did. And Ben Powers has been solid. Mike McGlinchey this year, and the quarterback, I think, has something to do with it. And it's not that I don't want to agree with Sean or disagree with Sean, but you look at, to use the Super Bowl as an example, when he says sacks are a quarterback stat as much as anything else, well, Russell Wilson's going to always take the most sacks. If Caleb Williams doesn't have the most time sacked in the next 5 years, it's going to be a credit to him and Ben Johnson that he will. But what we saw as a rookie is he's been such a good athlete. He's going to hold on as long as he can and then try to make something happen. Well, that's not Bo Nix. He's going to keep the offense on time. Thus, Mike McGlinchey looks even better than he did a year ago and looks like a more than capable pass protector.
So does that mean Patrick Mahomes had a really bad game if you got sacked 6 times?
To some degree, but then, the conversation too is how open are his guys? Look, he's got the fastest player in the history of the Combine.
Who?
And Xavier Worthy.
Wow.
But who knew that was Vic Fangio and the Eagles defense.
That doesn't mean that. I mean, you can cover fast guys.
You can, especially if you're going to create that shell that, Vic Fangio has created a blueprint, and then he finally had the personnel to execute it exactly the way he wanted in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But the other thing too, and Brandon Graham said this on the We're the Harrises, because, look, you played football forever. And so when I watch it and I have a thought, I'm always wondering, okay, what will validate that thought? Obviously what we see, but will someone repeat what's in my head? And you move Joe Tooney, who's an all-pro guard, to tackle because their tackles are such a mess. But you've now made your left guard worse no matter what, because you took one of the 2 or 3 best left guards in football and made him a tackle. But he's not really a tackle. He's a guard playing tackle, and your right tackle sucks too. And Brandon Graham's like, look, they had a guard playing tackle, so his punch wasn't right. And we knew that, and thus we kept attacking, because Joe Tooney, who's a hell of a guard, is just an okay tackle. And so they've got it. It reminds me exactly of what happened when they lost to the Bucs. Their tackles were terrible. Now there was injuries involved, so they need better tackle play, but also more than just Xavier Worthy. You need Rashee Rice back healthy. You need Travis Kelce to be younger. That's probably not happening. So you're going to
get younger, Travis.
And then DeAndre Hopkins and Juju Smith-Schuster are exactly who we thought they are at this point.
What, old receivers?
Just old receivers. And
DeAndre Hopkins had a bad drop in that game.
Yeah, and so it all worked together. But going back to the Broncos, a year ago they spent all that money, or 2 years ago they spent all that money. Last year they couldn't spend any money. This year they can spend some money. They don't necessarily have to. So how they approach it, because both Greg and George were like, we'll see what our approach is, because they're going to be like 30-something million under the cap.
Yeah.
Even with owing Russ, or dead cap because of Russ.
And we're going to get into some of those free agent hopes and dreams in the second half of this ball game that we call off field.
But to generalize the recap, sorry,
go ahead.
What's your best? I mean,
I thought it was a really good season for the Broncos.
Yeah,
I thought they defied expectations. They started to believe in each other. They learned how to win as a unit. The last decade in Broncos country, there have been talented players who didn't know how to win, who didn't believe they were going to win in the final couple of minutes of a game, who didn't have that sort of togetherness and sort of, dog in them, as Nick Bonito actually talked about. When he first got here, there weren't a lot of dogs in the locker room, and now
if you were to do that,
they're bringing in dogs. Hold on a second,
Yeah.
BK. They're bringing in some dogs, and they're getting guys to buy into Sean Payton's culture. And I think it does really all start with Sean Payton. As much as, he sort of is a bit of a grandstander, and he goes to New Orleans and walks around like he's the freaking mayor. He's in every little thing. He's going on every show.
I saw him at the game.
A little bit of a victory lap for Sean Payton. Like, hey, remember me? I'm the king of the city. You guys, hey, remember the good times, huh? Relative to the Super Bowl I won you guys 15 years ago. I'm back. And he was doing a little bit of that, but you know what?
You mean like when he's standing there with Lady Gaga and Gail Benson and the Fox crew as they're doing the
where he goes on
America Beautiful or whatever,
Kay Adams show.
Sure.
He goes on these barstool shows. He does all the stuff. Talks about how he bought the Chiefs receivers dinner. That's the least he could do after probably standing there in front of him and talking for 30 minutes. I mean, how long do you think he was talking to them?
Yeah, that probably wasn't a 1 minute.
He probably felt bad after he left.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I should probably pay for that.
Yeah, they were just trying to enjoy dinner, and I told them
like
stories about the 2017 draft.
So let me tell you about that shrimp. There's with the coach. We're just trying to eat. But
this is a great shrimp boat. I got it. Next time you guys come down,
I know the owner.
Yeah.
But aside from that, he's a fantastic football coach. He knows how to prepare his team. He knows exactly what he's looking for. The standard of excellence is through the roof, and that bodes well for the future of the Broncos.
And that's kind of to put a consensus on the recap of the season. There wasn't anyone that you talked to down there that thought, no, the Broncos were a fluke. There certainly were people like, oh, I would have liked to have seen the Bengals in the playoffs, but there wasn't anybody that thought, oh, the Chargers were head and shoulders above the Broncos. Like the Broncos snuck in, or the Steelers even, the Broncos played them in week 2. I think plenty of people had the Broncos somehow ended up ahead of the Steelers or in, and the Steelers were out. You would have understood why. And so now the Steelers stuff, when you talk about that at a different time, that dynamic, and I was able to get a lot more insight there in terms of the coaching situation and
in Pittsburgh,
and the Russ, and just the dynamics there.
All right,
we'll do that.
That's the end of the first quarter. Second quarter, let's see that graphic, and we are going to give Denver Broncos grades on this 2024 regular season.
I almost wanted you to write yours down because I wrote mine down and we could read each other's. That way we don't steal them.
I didn't write them down.
Okay.
But before we get into the grades, because it's not going to take forever, tell us a little bit about the dynamic with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Russell Wilson, because, of course, we care about that stuff. We're talking football on this show. What'd you learn, Brandon?
That most of the noise coming out about Russ wanting to return is from Russ, and that they got along great, that Arthur Smith got along great with Russ is from Russ's camp, and that Mike Tomlin really pushed Russ on Arthur Smith, and Arthur Smith just thought they would be able to do better with Justin Fields, but that they could run the offense the way he kind of envisioned it and the way he was empowered to run it. But that, and this is talking to people that are kind of close to it, that Mike T and Arthur get along fine. So it's not like, oh, we don't like each other. It was Mike T, it's his team, and Arthur's going to be a loyal soldier.
Yeah.
And so they ran the offense the best they could. And at times and George Pickens' role in it certainly mattered. Jalen Warren, Najee Harris figuring that dynamic out. And so it just didn't work. So there's almost no world where Russ is back there.
Yeah.
But there is some buzz about Russ in Vegas because Pete Carroll knows who Russ is more than anyone. And if that ends up being their best option, especially if they don't get Shedeur at 6 or don't trade up,
I think they got to get a new
don't
guy.
love Jackson Dart. Doesn't mean that they're not going to draft one of these young guys.
Does he spell his name with an X?
An X and an S.
Oh man,
now we have choices. That
Jackson.
Look, Russ wouldn't be a long-term answer unless something crazy happened, but you could stomach it in the short term because Pete knows
you got a young guy. You got Russ.
Yeah, and you still have Aiden O'Connell, who we'll see what he is, but bringing Russ in will keep you competitive. And it does. We saw that with the Steelers. He might lose you a game because he's going to throw it to the other team.
He won
these
6
days,
or 7 in a row at one point.
But he's going to still make great throws. And if the defense is better, and that's the thing too, is they have Max Crosby and they have Christian Wilkins. We just didn't see Christian Wilkins the second half of the year because he got hurt in that first Broncos game, maybe, and then we haven't seen him since.
Yeah.
They still have to get obviously a lot better. But Pete Carroll being there, they kept their defensive coordinator Patrick Graham, who they like, and so that Russ could end up there, but that Russ will not be back there. And then the news about Russ getting along with everybody was maybe coming from Russ's side of the table, and not the other. Not that the other guys are going, we freaking hate him. It's more just similar to kind of what we heard here with how they liked Russ or didn't like Russ.
It's one of those things where, you know, like the person gets out ahead of his own sort of bad press by flow. That's kind of weak. He did the same stuff here, you remember?
But also Seattle. And so
he
it's
got benched.
But then in Seattle too, you know, he's so unique to that city because he was the quarterback that won them a Super Bowl, and he did so much great stuff in the community. He was there for a decade, and they went to the playoffs so many times. So he's always going to be revered there, but you still got to hear the rumblings about Russ's personality. And so if there's people that take issue with you in Seattle and then here and then now in Pittsburgh, the problem might be the guy in the mirror and not everybody else.
So was it $53 million this year against the cap?
And 35 next.
35.
Yeah, but the cap jumps. It's not going to jump.
What, about 25 million?
What's some small percentage?
What's it jumping to?
I'll tell you the projected cap because this is one
I think it was like 250. It jumped to like 250.
So it might jump to like 265.
That's insane,
maybe,
bro.
It's just going to keep going.
It's a lot of money, man.
The TV revenues keep going up because, and they're going to keep
streaming stuff.
Yeah, because you know what's about to happen?
Tell me.
A full Netflix package that is going to be. Somebody told me what it's going to be. Netflix is going to have a whole season of. Not Friday, something. Netflix is going to have a whole package of something. I can't remember what it is.
What do you mean?
Like
of games?
Of games, a whole slate of games. I just can't remember exactly.
Wednesday night football.
Something along those lines.
Tuesday morning football.
It is funny, though, real quick. This is another aside, but like talking to people around the league, everyone freaked out when the playoff game was on Peacock a year ago because not everybody has Peacock. But when games have been on Amazon Prime, and everyone has Amazon Prime because we all order shit, and everyone has Netflix, no complaints. Right. We'd all know how to find that on our TV, for the most part. When it was on Peacock, everyone's up in arms. Now I got to get Peacock. Well, sorry. That's the way it goes.
At what point will it just all be under the same sort of pay-per-view umbrella and you just pay for the game you want to watch when you want to watch it?
They're not tax exempt anymore. The NFL was tax exempt forever, and now that they're not, because they were on over-the-air TV for free, which we know is dying. That's why you're watching us here on your computer, your phone, or your tablet, most likely, or your smart TV. It's coming, and you think about, I say it's coming, it could be 20 years, what people pay for Sunday ticket. What would you pay as a football fan to watch every game? Like you just have
a single game.
You'd have to still watch it through those, whatever, but like you get the overarching so that everybody gets their same piece, and it may never work like that. But if it was like $200 a month from September,
people would pay that.
People would pay whatever the number is. I used to think about that with ESPN. If you would have said, "Hey, ESPN costs this," I would have just, especially when they had almost everything. Like, all right, fine, I'm paying $25 a month or $30, whatever it costs. That's just what I'm paying. The salary cap is projected to be $272, and this year I think it was $255.
Yeah. And it went up $50 million in the last 2 years.
Yeah, part of that
was
was
up another 17. There.
Part of that was a COVID adjustment.
Because it went down.
Yeah, it went down, and then they didn't jump, and so they kind of did like a double jump.
Yeah,
but that'll allow the Broncos to be $30 million under the cap.
Yeah,
but do we want to give them grades here in second down?
Yeah, let's give them grades. So let's start off with the team overall. Brandon, what's your grade for the Broncos in 2024?
I go B+. I think you defied expectations. You get to the playoffs, but you don't win a playoff game, and I'm not picking on them for not winning it. We know how long the drought has been, but I go B+. And that's the only one I didn't write down. So at least you'll know that on the other ones, I've written them down. So we'll see how close we are.
So knowing that, this is it's about the climb, like Miley Cyrus said,
Did she say that?
It's the climb. It's the climb. It's a song. The climb. It's about the climb. And in this climb, we're just starting it out. And I think they did a damn good job this year climbing to a much higher elevation than they have been. I give the Broncos an A- for this year, and just because they got
A-. How'd you? No, I'm just kidding.
The minus.
I'm so indignant that my B+ and your A-.
Yeah, A+, B-. I'm sorry, A-, B+ for the team overall. Now let's start on different sides of the ball. Brandon, what do you give the defense?
The defense, and this one I do have written down.
Yeah,
A+.
A+.
Top 3 defense in the league.
Yeah,
led the league in sacks. Defensive player of the year. Kept you in just about every game. Had a rough one against the Ravens, but that was a team that felt like a team loss as much as anything. You didn't have any 70-20 kind of embarrassments. Obviously, things in Cincy didn't go great, but if they pick up the 2 first downs after they force the takeaway and it's 17-17 and they kick a game-winning field goal, they get out of there holding the most prolific passing offense to 17 points on the road. I know it's a big if, but like that was the circumstance. The defense had done their job to that point.
Yeah.
And had the offense done their job, then you're saying A++ maybe. And again, the Buffalo game, when your offense only scores a touchdown on the opening drive and scores no more points,
yeah,
you can only pick on the defense so much. And so I'm giving them an A+. When you're a top 3 defense with the top sack unit in the league and the best defensive player, and you're probably going to upgrade your linebackers just by circumstance with Alex Singleton getting healthy, and if they give money to one of these other guys, then yeah, I think that was the best unit across the board of the 3 units.
I'm not a big plus guy. I'm going to give him an A.
Okay.
I think
okay. I guess.
I think they did a fantastic job.
If they were the number 1 defense, would they get A+ from you? Like,
if they would have had
to get A+?
The A+ would have been a better performance in that playoff game for me. They got pushed around. They absolutely got dominated at the line of scrimmage, and that's an experience thing. That's something that they're going to learn. But I can't give them an A+ because of that. And there were just you mentioned the Ravens game. You mentioned a couple other games there that weren't perfect, and that's fine. There was a damn good season by the Broncos defense.
The Chargers too, when you're up 21, nothing or whatever they're up. Yeah,
they got pushed around by the Chargers, got pushed around by the Ravens, got pushed around by the Bills. For me, that takes away the plus. I'm giving the Broncos defense an A for 2024. Good job, fellas. All right, let's talk about the Broncos offense led by Bo Nix. What grade do you give the Broncos offense in 2024? Brandon Krisztal.
B+.
B+.
Because their run game just wasn't consistent, and we can try to guess the factors. It felt like Sean Payton was the biggest factor, but also when you look at it, those backs, nobody was clear cut. They got to tote the rock. They got to stay committed, because you talk about the Bills. What James Cook was a year ago in the first year or 2 of his career and what he was this year, there was a noticeable jump. And Javonte Williams, we know how much of it, or we have to think some of it's related to that devastating knee injury. He just hasn't gotten all the way back to what we thought he'd be. Jaleel McLaughlin's exactly who we think he is, but he's not a every down feature back. And then Audric Estime could never get on track. Tyler Bidet certainly had a great game against Tampa, but then he gets hurt against the Jets, and we never really saw the best version of him because he was obviously fighting so long to get back. And then Blake Watson, who knows? Let's see. So because they didn't run the ball, and I'm going to put some of that on Sean, but some of it just on their personnel. And Bo Nix was really, really good. I'd give Bo an A for his rookie year. I think the offense overall, they'll B+, because they did score more points than they've scored in forever. And it felt like, okay, once this offense really gets locked in and adds a couple pieces.
Forever meaning the dark years
since Peyton Manning,
that have been really bad.
Since Peyton Manning midway through the 2014 season.
Yeah.
Where he got hurt against the Chargers. And after that,
it's been better. And so it feels good. To me, I can't give them that high of a grade. I think the offense was the weak part of this team. And I think that lack of running game identity really hurt them, especially against the Bills in the playoffs when it actually matters. I felt there's some sort of inconsistency with the play call, and that starts with Sean Payton. I'm going to give him a B- on offense. I almost want to give him a C+ because of the reality of what they're – look, you just mentioned, compared to how bad it's been, cool.
Yeah.
But if you're comparing these guys to some of the best offenses in the league and what you're going to have to do week in and week out to be considered that, they're not there yet. And, I hesitate to blame the –
I just want to ask you a question. I'm sorry to cut you. What's the most telling metric for is it just points? Is it yards? Is it average?
It's points and yards. Points and yards. So I sat with the old wise one, Mike Shanahan, last year, wrote a really in-depth article on him, was thinking about writing a book about his coaching tree. Didn't end up doing that, but did a lot of research, talked to him a lot about the past, about teams he was on, about teams he's coached. When he goes back and looks at all the historical sort of excellence of a team or whatever, he says you look at points and yards. It gives you a good idea of where the team was ranked. You know what I'm saying? Now, of course, there's context to why teams score points, and the defense affects the offense and vice versa. That said, I think you get a pretty good idea of where a team's at with the points and the yards. And I think the Broncos, probably find themselves somewhere in the middle of the pack in the league in points and yards, and it didn't even start that way. Most of the season, they were in the bottom 10.
They were dead last in the playoffs because they only had 224.
Yeah,
That's what comes up first. But I'm curious where they were in the regular season.
But yeah, I mean, they got their act together as the season went on.
But you're right; they were dead middle in yards.
Yeah,
and then I'll check points real quick. We know they were a little better passing, but points per game they were 10th.
Yeah,
but some of that's defense because this doesn't factor out offense,
sixes and things like that. So that's why I think they're average as an offense. And we're talking about the running backs. I think this is a lack of commitment to the running game more so than bad personnel. I think all these guys have talent. Back in the day when I was playing for the Broncos, there was a string of 1,000-yard rushers where the joke was that they can pull them off the street and plug them in, and they can rush for 1,000 yards.
Were you here when they went and grabbed Tatum from selling cell phones at the Aurora Mall?
Yeah, he was at a kiosk at the mall. And next thing you know, he's running for 150 yards in a game. So that's about your commitment to the run. That's about the way you practice. That's about your offensive line. That's the identity of the team. And Sean Payton, I don't think fully has created an offensive identity here yet. He's still searching for that. He talked about it on the various shows he was at in New Orleans about how they're looking for a joker and that whole thing. And I don't think he has the personnel that makes him feel comfortable as a play caller yet, or doesn't know these guys well enough. But the lack of running game to me was a lack of dedication to the running game.
You talk about Mike Shanahan, and so it's when you look at Mike, the easiest next person to look at is Kyle Shanahan. And Kyle, whether it's Raheem Mostert running for 200 yards in the NFC Championship game, Christian McCaffrey last year, the offensive player of the year. Christian gets hurt. Who's the running back that came in after that? 24.
Jordan Mason.
Mason looked awesome.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, oh well, good thing I had him on my fantasy team.
Yeah.
He gets hurt. Isaac Guerrero gets in there.
Guerendo's
and Mike McDaniel, who certainly grew up under Mike Shanahan and Kyle Shanahan, whether it's Devin Achane or Mostert or whoever their other backs are.
Yeah.
Their game plan still has a true commitment to the run. And even Sean McVay, whether it's Kyron Williams, a little bit of Blake Corum going back, obviously Todd Gurley when he first got there, but Todd Gurley's banged up. Here comes C.J. Anderson. There's a commitment that I don't know if Sean's ever truly had. He just has maybe had better backs. When he first got there, he had Deuce McAllister and Reggie Bush, and then he had Darren Sproles as his joker to go with Mark Ingram, but then he had Ingram, and then he had Ingram and Alvin Kamara, and so
he also talks about Jeremy Shockey being a joker and what's his face?
Jimmy Graham
and those kinds of guys.
But Kamara isn't going to have 1,600 yards rushing for Sean Payton because that's just not the way he's going to use them.
Right.
And so it does make, and we'll do the draft plenty, but if they were to get Austin Genty one way or another, when you have a player that seems that Ashton Genty, it seems that dynamic, that then you have to figure out a way to get him to use him the way Saquon Barkley is used, because he's not there, but that same kind of, or James Cook is used.
Yeah.
And so it'll be, or Josh Jacobs, it'll be interesting to see how they address that position. But you're right, the commitment is the biggest issue, because you have the O-line to, Ben Powers would much rather be blocking in the run. Mike McGlinchey, those guys are road graders, and we saw it San Fran and Baltimore.
Yeah.
Their ability in the run game, and we know what Quinn Miners is. So Minor. I'm going to talk to him, find out if there's a silent T.
All right. Let's give one more grade for the special teams unit.
I wonder if we have the same grade.
I'm going to give him a B+.
Okay, I guess we don't. I'm giving him an A.
Yeah, an A.
And the only reason I didn't give him an A+ is because of that Chiefs, the loss to get to the Chiefs.
Yeah, that was
the kicking game. Kicking game was great. No,
and then also San Diego. I'm sorry, LA Chargers. That punt, the boom, the boom. At the end of the first half.
Yeah.
The punt penalty. Boom. So look, you lost your special teams coaches for a reason. And it was because there was some disconnect there. Whether Sean Payton's expectations weren't met, whether people weren't happy, whether they just wanted to move on, you didn't retain them. You're going to be going through with another coaching staff. To me, that means there was a little bit of disarray there. You do have Marvin Mims, who's an All-Pro, Pro Bowl returner, and I think the new kickoff rule made things a little weird. Trying to judge the kickoff and the kickoff return units with these new rules that nobody understands anyway and are really lame. So it's really about punt, return, field goal, block. I thought Will Lutz did a pretty good job this year as a kicker. I thought the punter was fine. And I thought the coverage unit on punt was pretty good. I don't think they let up any big returns.
Don't really remember any big returns with either unit, certainly not in the kicking game.
Yeah.
You've got the best punt returner in football, and they were able to utilize them. You talk about Will Lutz. I looked. The Broncos were 6th in the league in field goal percentage at 91.2, only behind Tampa, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, Chargers, and,
Yeah.
and Titans.
Will
So
Lutz's nails, man.
Will Lutz's nails. They were good on the kickoff. They didn't ever have any kickoffs out of bounds that put them in some weird spot other
Right.
than when they had the penalty or whatever that was that worked to their advantage. And so that's why I gave him a solid A. Riley Dixon was a
Riley Dixon,
really good punter, and their punt coverage was outstanding.
Oh, Riley Dixon hit Marvin Mims for first down.
And
what was that against Buffalo though?
Yeah, that was against Buffalo.
That was a one bright spot.
It just led to another punt.
Yeah,
it was a punt. It was a fake punt that led to another punt.
Right.
But for Riley, who's a kid from Central New York, who was I think an all-state baseball player and a pretty good quarterback. I think he was like an all-state third baseman. And Ben kept telling us like it's a weapon. He's a weapon. It's good to have. And they finally unleashed it, but it was to no avail. But
so you give the Broncos
solid A as special teams, A+ on defense and B+ on offense. I'm a I guess kinder greater than you are.
Well, I gave an A- overall. I think I gave the defense an A. I gave the Broncos offense a B-, and special teams unit a B+. I think overall it's a pretty good report card.
Yeah, that is a good report card.
Halftime. All right, real quick halftime interlude before we thank you for the whistle before we get into the second half here. I just want to know about New Orleans and the parties, man, because Super Bowl is about the parties, and you're a party animal, low key. Brandon Krisztal likes to get out there and cut a rug. Tell me about the places you went and the people you saw.
Okay, so I'll go night by night. First night, opening night, the party is let's go meet the teams. It was the dumbest setup that they've ever had. Okay, most years it used to be called Media Day. Now it's called Opening Night. Okay, and opening night, very first one, Shark Tank with the Broncos, Super Bowl 50. Like, we're doing it at night, making it a primetime show instead of doing it at 1 p.m. when only people watching NFL Network are seeing it, and it's people that are home back then. So opening night. Most years up until last year, we've been at a basketball or hockey stadium, and you're just on the floor. And they invite fans, and it's cool. And they do an hour with the team. Then they do some. Scott Hansen will talk to both quarterbacks, both coaches in between. Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce in a given. And then the other team goes an hour later. Well, this year they did it at the stadium, which is what they did with the Raiders, but they rolled the field in and out. So we were just like on a half list. This year they did the whole stadium outside the playing surface, fake field. So we weren't going to mess the grass up. But so if you want to talk to Nick Sirianni and you want to talk to Jalen Hurts, you had to go a full 150 yards with all these people there. Nonetheless, it was good vibes because you had marching bands and New Orleans bands and both cheerleaders and all that. And we made a great video. You should go check that out on all our Guerrilla Sports social channels because my guy Jason Thompson, our stud videographer, made a great video there. Tuesday media party. It was at a place called Mardi Gras World, same place I had it last time. That's where they build the floats. And I should show you some of the video of these floats as they're being built. They have this crazy laser robot that now chisels out these Mardi Gras floats. It was awesome. And all these New Orleans great restaurants. Master P was there cooking and then took a picture with Master P. So that was kind of cool. Then Manny Fresh played with this New Orleans band. We had all this great food, great vibe. There were snakes and alligators that you could hold.
Wow.
Yeah, it was cool. I took pictures, sent it to Chad Brown holding the snake. He's like, that's a baby python. I'm like, it didn't seem like that much of a baby to me. And he's like, no, you just kind of messing with me. Wednesday, not a big party night. The Kelce's did something with Barstool, or the Kelce's did something, Barstool did something, but that was Wednesday, I think. Thursday, our guy Ryan Harris comes down.
Drinks every night?
Drinks were available. I had a couple more drinks than I needed to on Tuesday night after the media party. Wednesday night, took it pretty easy. We had to go see Kendrick Lamar early Thursday morning.
Yeah.
And all that. And so that was Thursday. And then I think I talked to you on Thursday as well.
Yep.
And then Thursday night, it's Ditka and Jaws, but now it's kind of Urlacher and Jaws because Ditka wasn't there. They do a big cigar party. I'm not the biggest cigar guy, but they give you cigars, and that's an open bar. Then it's NFL Honors Night. We didn't get credentialed NFL Honors, but knew Pat Surtain was going to be at our friend's lounge to celebrate. So that's where we got to talk to PS2.
Cool. And
got to do that, and then hit Bourbon Street, which was starting to pick up. And then Friday night's one of your bigger party nights. The Madden Bowl, got to go to that, and that was Shabuzi singing his hit bar song, and I've never seen this by an artist. He plays his hit song, that song Bar Song, everybody's getting tipsy.
Yeah.
He goes, hey, that was fun, let's do it again. plays it again.
Yeah.
I've never seen that.
Everyone's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Or like
you just do it second
we
and then
just
do it
heard
again.
you do
it second
bro.
for the people that are early. Like,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? We're going to do this one more time. Like, you know how we're going to end this. Do that. Or say, hey, we're making a video, so let's do this again. Let us know why you're being weird about it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, once is enough. The interlude, which I thought was almost a little insulting, Trombone Shorty was playing up in a balcony with his band. I'm like, this is New Orleans royalty. Put him on the damn stage. Jelly Roll played after that. Then more Trombone Shorty, and then Chris Stapleton, who's amazing, but kind of brings the vibe down. Yeah. So that was a big Friday party. Saturday, Lee Steinberg always has a cool party at the Museum of Jazz. Taste of the NFLs at the World War II Museum.
Lee Steinberg's?
Went to both of those. That was cool. The Museum of
First
Jazz.
Super Bowl party I ever went to was Lee Steinberg's, and it was in 2002 in San Diego. That's
39 years, something like that. And then you and I at the Lee Steinberg party at Super Bowl 50. We went from there to the NFL Legends Lounge.
That's right.
Yeah, that was a good Saturday for sure.
Yeah.
And then the Broncos won the next day.
Yeah.
But that night was like the SI party. I didn't go to that, but Rick Ross played at Ohm Lounge, which was cool to see Rick Ross do his 5 or 6 hits, comes in, plays songs, leaves. And then Sunday, I actually snuck into the Eagles. Actually, snuck in. A friend had a pass, but I went super late. My buddy Freddie's like, "Hey, do you want to come to the Eagles after party? I have an extra wristband for you." So I went over there Tuesday night, Sunday night. Yeah, so
pretty action-packed week.
It's an action-packed week. It felt like I spent a month there.
Yeah.
Even though it was only a week.
And how many Super Bowls have you been to, Brandon?
I've been to the game now 13 times in Guerrilla Sports. You know, it's our first year really talking football, and we're there covering the game in the stadium. We're in the post-game media stuff. It was cool to be there with Guerrilla Sports because I've been there before with other outlets, obviously. And the 17th time I've covered the week of events. But I missed the last New Orleans Super Bowl when the Ravens and Niners played. So it was, and I love New Orleans. I've seen the Jayhawks play in the Final Four there 3 times, including winning it 2 years ago. Been there a couple other times. Been there for Mardi Gras. I need to go for Jazz Fest this year. Pearl Jam and Dave Matthews are playing Jazz Fest.
Wow!
But
why jazz? That's not jazz.
No, Jazz Fest. There's plenty of jazz. Like they don't skimp on the jazz, but they definitely have like Elton John will play it one year, or the Rolling Stones. It's just it's a great 2-weekend festival where it's the same bands both.
Well, two of my favorite bands there.
And then Pearl Jam and Dave
and Pearl Jam. Eddie Vedder, one of the best lyricists of all time. Not lyricists, vocalist.
Oh, vocalist.
His range is incredible. I mean, his ability to.
You ever see Jay Moore's Eddie Vedder bit?
No.
He's like, we're at the forum watching Pearl Jam. He's like, I want to talk to you about the kids in Darfur. He's like, play Jeremy. I got a babysitter. I don't care. Like he's just getting into his human rights stuff.
Yeah.
No, Eddie Vedder's Pearl Jam's awesome live. So
well, happy you went out there to represent Gorilla. Good job doing it.
I think we did a lot.
Check out all the
stuff
that Brandon did on our YouTube and our socials and all that. All right, let's get into the second half, and we've been going a little long, so we're going to condense the second half, the third and the fourth quarters, into one conversation, and that's really about the Broncos' needs. Now we're going to do a third quarter of the draft needs, and then fourth quarter of the free agent, and we're just going to condense that and talk about who the Broncos are going to target this offseason. Sean Payton has talked about how the entire calendar year has 2 phases, and phase 2 has begun here, and this is preparing for the next season and finding the new talent. Where do the Broncos start when they're trying to figure out how to improve this team?
There are a couple key spots that they have to fill, and so you don't want to draft for need, but because they have a few needs, if they stick at 20, there should be a couple different directions they can go. If somehow Ashton Genty's there, and he may be, the Cowboys may pass on him. They may re-sign Rico Dowdle. They may have another idea at running back, and they're not the only team looking for a running back. But Ashton Genty could very easily be there at 20. He doesn't fill your joker role. He's an every down back that could just be really good. Tyler Warren from Penn State, who was walking around in New Orleans, and I didn't get a chance to go talk to him, and I know it would have been easier there than it will be at the Combine. You're going to have to trade up to get him. He's not going to be at 20.
Why?
Because there's too many people that see his attributes.
Did he look like he's got the swag? Does he look like he's Joker?
He's got long hair.
Did he have Joker vibes?
I couldn't sense Joker vibes one way or the other, but because Brock Bowers was so good, that really helps Tyler Warren this year.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're the same player. Brock Bowers we may end up talking about Brock Bowers the way we talk about Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews.
Well, he's on pace.
And Rob. He's ahead of everyone's pace.
Best rookie year in the history of the position.
Yeah. So because of that, it's good for Tyler Warren. But then you've got is it Moreland, the kid from from Michigan. He might be there at 20. So, but I think tight end, running back, they want to upgrade an inside linebacker. Zach Bond's a guy that is on a 1-year deal with Philly. They could franchise him, and that money's not crazy for them. They could sign him to a long-term deal, but they're really leveraged against the cap. They did the same thing Sean and Mickey Loomis did in New Orleans, but Philly came through with not one but 2 Super Bowl appearances and a win here now. So they just don't have any room to really add cash. And if Brandon Graham retires, that helps and stuff. But they may not be able to bring Zach Bond back. So Zach Bond and Nick Bolton are available. I'd look at those guys, inside linebackers, to upgrade your speed there with Alex Singleton coming back. You're probably not bringing Sternad and Cody Barton back. You're probably bringing one or the other back.
Probably
if you can.
Cody, right?
I would think Cody. Sternad is a little faster, but Cody stepped in and took that job and ran with it.
And you gave the defense an A+.
Yeah.
And Cody was the signal caller on that defense after the Alex Singleton ACL injury in Tampa.
But if you've got Zach Bond and Alex, you may not need Cody as much as you want to have Sternad.
Isn't Zach Bond an edge player, though?
He can be, but he lines up on the inside.
Does he?
Yeah, because of they're running a 4th. I guess either way, you run him as one of your 2 inside backers. But Nick Bolton for sure. And the Chiefs aren't in terrible salary cap hell. If Travis Kelce retires, that'll free up some money. But inside linebacker, I don't think there's one at 20 that makes sense. But they need to upgrade there. And then as much as I think
don't you see him going with an offensive player in that first round?
Probably, just because
running back or tight end.
Just because Sean Payton wants more toys, and the defense was really good with the exact cast of characters. Even if you were to bring them all back just like this, you'd be like, well, everyone's under contract except for Barton and Sternad. So if you brought one of them back with Singleton, who's already ready to go, he told me last week, he's like, if we had to play in this game this week, I could probably play with a brace. He's like, but I won't even have a brace in the spring.
Yeah.
I mean, he heard it in week 3.
Well, he's saying that, but he because it feels good.
No, he's going by what Bo Lowry told him. He's like, well, actually, he had a really
feels good.
I think he told me this on camera. He's like, yeah, I'm doing squats, I'm doing this. He's like, wasn't necessarily telling my wife that, and they should have likely just had a baby. She was at 38 weeks last week. He's like, baby could come any day now, or they're about to have a baby. But he's like, I wasn't in a hurry to tell her all the extra stuff I was doing. And then she saw Bo. He's like, yeah, man, he's doing squats, he's doing this. And so Alex, I think, was dogging it a bit at home while his wife's 9 months pregnant. But he said he's that far along. And anyway, so you'll have Alex back. You'd have Brandon Jones and PJ Locke and Skinner and Key. And, they like these young safeties. But an upgrade at safety also would make some sense, I think, next to Brandon Jones. And then PJ becomes a depth player.
Special teams guy, which he was before.
For sure.
What about corner? What about Riley? I mean, do we feel really good about Riley Moss, or do you think there's a chance they upgrade that position?
I think they do feel good about him. I think I don't want to say exceeded expectations. I think he met him. A 3rd-round pick.
I definitely think he exceeded him.
Because he's a white corner, or because you just had lower expectations based on what we saw as rookie year? I mean, he was hurt, so we didn't really get to see him.
It was what is it, 3rd round pick?
That's
didn't play at all his rookie year.
Yeah, some special teams at the end of the year and some weird sub packages, but they didn't really matter. I think I guess he exceeded expectations, but when you've got the best corner, the best defensive player in football opposite of you, you're going to get picked on. And
you are. And
other than against T. Higgins, which also comes after the MCL thing, and you were as loud as anybody talking about it.
I think that for Riley, his what he's shown when he's healthy is someone who is a very capable opposite player from Patrick Surtain who can handle the smoke. The question is, can he stay healthy? And then that's a question for every single pro football player, but some bodies are more suited to stay healthy than others. And Riley has had his share of injuries in the last couple of years. And I know all about that. I mean, I was a guy who had promising moments and then got hurt over and over. I mean, it was so deflating and defeating. And so I would, I wanted to be part of the plan, but when they bring in another guy that I had to compete with, I understood it, and so Riley understands that they could bring in a guy to compete with him. And by the way, everyone who's on the roster is competing with you. Even the guys who are behind you are your competition. And so that's part of the lifestyle of being a pro athlete. They're always bringing in guys to take your jobs, and you always got to earn it and win it. But I just wonder, what their where their thinking is when it comes to Riley in that corner position.
Well, they have a little bit of insurance, and we saw it later after they realized Levi Wallace was not the answer, and that his best football was definitely behind him. as were the receivers he was trying to cover. But Chris Abrams-Draine,
stepped in.
Every coach is going to spin something one way or another, but Sean was adamant that they kept getting guys who they had higher grades on in later rounds. Troy Franklin was a 2nd round grade. They got him in the 4th. And Chris Abrams-Draine was a 3rd round grade. They got him in the 5th. Same with Estime.
Yeah.
And so Chris Abrams-Draine, when he finally got in, other than a PI call, but he played really well, all things considered. And so I just don't know if that's a priority, but I think about what Vic Fangio would say over and over is that you need 3 good corners, and you need more than that. And
there
aren't 96 good corners, but they have the best corner in football, who's the best defensive player. And they have, I don't have the slot
arguably
grades,
one of the better nickels in the league,
but he's got to be high on the list. And Chris Harris, who's obviously a big part of what we do with where the Harrises was the gold standard in the 2010s as the best slot, corner and nickel corner, even though he's a starter, but played inside a bunch when they went with 3 corners. We've seen that around here. And Jaquan McMillan, while he's not the exact same player Chris was, he's certainly these last 2 years, he might be in line for a new deal that's going to pay him. I guess he's got probably 1 year left on his rookie deal or whatever, but they're going to have to, they need to keep him because of what he gives you. I just don't think corner is the priority that certainly tight end, running back, even more explosive receiver. If there's one that makes sense, I'm not in a hurry to go grab T. Higgins, although I do think that makes you more dynamic. Debo's interesting, but he's never played 17 games or 16 games when it was 16 games. He's never played a full season.
His playing style is pretty brutal, and he kind of lowers his head and gets himself into a lot of physical situations. You love his style of play, but it's hard to stay healthy playing that way. So Sean Payton did go on Kay Adams show, Up and Adams.
He literally came in and ran out.
He had stars in his eyes, and he's leaning forward a lot and licking his lips. All right, whatever. I'm not going to judge you for that moment, Sean. But because he was able to open up and say some things he wouldn't have said to us. He talked about the needs. He talked about the joker. He talked about a tight end running back situation. He talked about the middle of the field. He talked about safety, middle linebacker. And so, I assume they're going to spend their draft picks on those types of guys. Running back, tight end, an inside linebacker, a safety, and some other best player availables situations. They got 7 draft picks?
There's 7 draft
3
picks.
in the 6th round?
3 in the 6th, no 5th.
No 5th.
And I guess that means probably no something else.
All right. Well, we are going to be looking for that, and we're going to be talking about that on off field. But I also want to just dig into the Debo thing really quick, because Debo Samuel has been rumored to be interested in coming to the Denver Broncos. He has requested a trade from the San Francisco 49ers. A lot of folks think he'd look really good in orange and blue. But then you got a guy named Marvin Mims who is been starting to do some stuff in the backfield as the sort of joker, not really a joker, but doing some things that Debo does. Would that, if you bring in Debo Samuel, sort of move Marvin Mims and what you've been doing with him to the side, and Debo takes precedent there?
I don't think so, because Sean Payton seemed to figure out how to use multiple weapons when he had them. And because he had Jimmy Graham and Darren Sproles at the same time, if my math is right.
I think so. Yeah.
You can make it you can make it work. And Debo's so unique that you're going to line him up a bunch of places.
Would it change how you configure your backfield?
Probably not. Maybe just with who's up on game day and how many you have on the active roster.
Because he does a lot of stuff from the backfield.
But you're probably not lining him up at tailback more than 3-4 times a game. Like, you'll motion him out, and you're going to put him and do a bunch of stuff, and he'll be off the ball behind the tight end and jet sweep.
Yeah, but they're doing that with Marvin Mims 3 or 4 times a game at least.
They are, but
Debo's more of a running back.
And what are you going to do with? But why not have both of them on the field together?
What I'm saying. Yeah, put them both in the backfield.
Yeah.
So how does that change your running back room?
I get maybe on game day you only have 2 up instead of 3 up, especially if you're keeping Michael Burton, who in short yardage you could line him up at tailback and Nate Atkins at fullback if you had to.
Yeah.
Because 1 or 2 guys get nicked up, and you don't want to line up Debo as a tailback on 4th and 3rd and goal on the 2. You want to just hand it to Burton with Atkins blocking if you don't sneak it. But if you go get Debo, which isn't going to cost you a lot of draft capital, I don't think. I think it'll at most a 2nd, but it's probably like 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 3rd, 4th, and one of those 6, and they don't even have to all necessarily be this year. It could be certainly one of those 6, probably a 3rd, maybe it's next year's 4th or next year's 3rd. It's not going to. You're not going to have to break the bank. It's not going to be what Myles Garrett is going to cost, whoever trades for Myles Garrett. And I think even Higgins would cost him more because he's a true number one receiver. The only reason he's not number one is because he has maybe the best receiver in football opposite of him. Debo's going to want a new deal, though. And that's where you have to decide what is he worth and how do you – I would incentivize it based on playing time. I'd be like, hey, here's what you've done. Here's where it is. But we're setting it here. And if you play 17 games, it's more than $1 million. It's $3 million, or something like that. And I don't know if he and his representatives would go for that. But I certainly wouldn't scoff at adding him because that just makes your offense way more dynamic and stresses the defense. And that's what you want to do the most is stress the defense.
Deebo Samuel brings something to an offense that not a lot of folks can, and that's yak. Yards after the catch, Deebo breaks tackles. That's the one criticism I would have of the pass catchers of the Broncos. They don't break tackles.
Except LJ.
LJ Humphrey is the best receiver with the ball in his hands.
He has 20
but the rest of the guys, they haven't been breaking tackles, and you need a guy like that on your team. Deebo can take it 2 yards and take it to the house. That's the kind of thing that galvanizes the team. That's the kind of thing that sparks an offense, and the Broncos could use a player like Deebo Samuel. We will see what happens. Like you said, the Broncos have 7 draft picks. That's in a couple of months. Free agency opens in a couple of weeks.
Month. Yeah. I think March 12th.
So we'll be keeping our eye on that. We'll be talking about it off field. And before we get out of here, guys, I got a 2-minute warning that I'm going to issue to Brandon Krisztal here. And you got 2 minutes to convince me or answer this question. Are you ready? 2 minutes on the clock. There we go. Brandon Krisztal, who will have, when all is said and done, the better professional career? Shedeur Sanders or Travis Hunter?
That is a really good question. We did find out today that Travis is going to be at the combine as a cornerback.
Okay.
So he's going to go through cornerback meetings and cornerback drills, and he's not going to do any drills. Cornerback meetings, cornerback media. He's not going to go there as a wide receiver, and that's maybe one to kind of spice up the cornerback, whatever. When he sits and talks with teams, they're going to talk about how they're going to use him. And there's a chance that he meets with, I don't know if he meets with all 32 teams, but he's going to meet with 20 teams because there's plenty of teams that'll say, we want to trade up and go get you, or we'd like to figure that out. Shedeur is going to go somewhere between 1 and 8 and is going to be a starting quarterback. May not be right away. Depends on where he goes exactly. I think with Travis, you're just like, is he durable enough to play 10 years and do all the things we know he can do? So Shedeur is probably the safer bet. At the same time, betting on a rookie quarterback or a quarterback is always a crapshoot. So
a crapshoot?
A crapshoot. I think that
it's like when you fire a pistol at a porta potty.
I think that
crapshoot.
I think it's actually related to.
I know that was a joke. No. Crap shoot.
I'm still tired. Okay, I don't know if it's
56 seconds left.
I'm saying it's Shedeur. That's my. But reluctantly, I'm not putting a lot of money on either. I'm not convicted one way or the other, but I think it's Shedeur because it feels safer to bet on a quarterback.
Really, I think it's a lot safer to bet on the transcendent two-way player who's a really, really awesome corner.
Yeah, I guess Charles Woodson had a good career.
Yeah, and a guy who won the Heisman Trophy and is not being put in a position that a rookie quarterback is. Like, save our franchise, dude. Like, the rest of our team sucks. We want you to do this. That pressure is not going to be put on Travis. Travis is going to be able to go out there and play ball. Where do you think Travis is going to get drafted? I mean, at least like number-wise. Top 10, right?
Top 3.
Top 3.
Figure out how you're going to do the quarterbacks. Abdul Carter is going to be in there. I don't think Cam Ward and Shedeur are both going in the top 3.
You don't?
I don't.
Who will go first?
It feels like momentum's for Cam Ward now. He's got a stronger arm. And when they're throwing side by side, you're like, oh, he does have a stronger arm.
Well, I think you did. I'm going to give you a B+ on that.
Okay. What are you giving yourself?
A+, of course. Yeah, I crushed that.
All right.
As usual. All right, that's going to do it for us.
Give you an A-, but
okay, well, that's fine. That's still a pretty good report card, Brandon. Brandon, I want to thank you for coming on off field and really representing Gorilla as well as you did all week in New Orleans. You rocked it. That's kind of like where you're in your bag.
It's a comfortable situation to be there, and got your old teammate Champ Bailey calling me, "Hey, where are you? Where's the Gorilla?"
Hey, where are you?
Yeah, because we were.
You're like,
I wasn't even
Champ.
I know I wasn't even on his dance card.
Cool.
And I'm like, "Hey, when you get into the media center, I'm sitting in the Kendrick Lamar thing." He's like, "I'm walking in now, but I'll make sure to stop and talk to you." And then
cool, man.
So
Champ's the best.
He is the best, and hopefully, maybe we can get him involved in some stuff here at Gorilla.
Yeah. Well, we love Champ, and we love you, Brandon. We love you guys for rocking with us today on Off Field. Brought to you by Trusted American Mortgage. Go see if they can save you some money today. TrustedAmerican.com. I'm Nate Jackson. This is Brandon Krisztal. We're off field. See ya.